I've noticed a common theme in the world of science, and that is benefiting mankind. In fact, Science Direct released an article, and the title was Science for the Benefit of All, wherein they write, "Science is a knowledge based on hypothesis, observations, and experiments. From its very beginning, science has served humanity and will continue to do so until the needs of human beings are fulfilled. We are of the view that to find a solution to our problems or satisfy human needs, it is important to ponder new ways in science, generate new ideas, and share with others so the concept of science for the benefit of all remain alive and forever." If you can accept that our priorities in modern society have lost touch with the necessities of life, then it might not sound too alarming that the development of technology is centered on our wants rather than our needs. Although science is advertised as the answer to every problem for the benefit of all, underneath the surface we find that it is nothing more than a channel through which the elites have introduced their devices to control the world. We are conditioned to desire the technology that makes our lives easier and more entertaining rather than desiring what is best for the well-being of mankind. If this were not so, then our government would not be funding programs such as NASA. I recently saw an internet meme that pictured two starving children whose bones were horrendously defined through their skin. They did not appear to have any muscle tissue. In the picture, they were both reaching for food. The caption appropriately read, "Who cares about Mars?" This appeared shortly after NASA announced they had successfully landed the InSight rover on Mars. When I visited NASA's website to determine the purpose of the mission, the agency only had this to say about the goal. The InSight mission seeks to uncover how a rocky body forms and evolves to become a planet by investigating the interior structure and composition of Mars. The mission will also determine the rate of Martian tectonic activity and meteorite impacts. Basically, they claim to be studying rocks, which unfortunately takes precedence over the immediate needs of those suffering here on Earth. The price tag for this is not small. As Forbes documented, in 2016, the NASA budget was $19.3 billion out of $3.95 trillion in federal spending. This means that 0.5% of the federal budget was allocated to anything space-related. Needless to say, our cultural priorities are out of touch with reality. When media floods their headlines with meaningless accomplishments and neglects those in need, it demonstrates that we are sorely misguided about what constitutes benefiting mankind. Nevertheless, scientific achievements will always be advertised deceptively. One example that will open the door to the elite's dark motives is the research program known as HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. The most prominent instrument at HAARP is the Ionospheric Research Instrument, or the IRI, a high-power radio frequency transmitter facility operating in the high-frequency band. The IRI is used to temporarily excite a limited area of the ionosphere. This is a high-power, high-frequency phased array radio transmitter with a set of 180 antennae disposed in an array of 12 by 15 units that occupy a rectangle of about 30 to 40 acres. The IRI is used to temporarily energize a small portion of the ionosphere. Despite any good intentions, this instrument, the IRI, is capable of manipulating the weather by stimulating electrons in the ionosphere. It is not a far stretch to say that it contributes to generating hurricanes and has the potential to lead to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Of course, this should not be misconstrued to say that it is the initial cause of weather disaster. Wikipedia will not explain it in such drastic terms. They say it is a way to, quote, energize a small portion and temporarily excite a limited area of the ionosphere. When you put it in sugar-coated terms, it does not sound nearly as diabolical. This is not to say that HAARP was established in efforts to control the weather. The program should not be confused with the implementation system. Some have said the weather manipulating capability of the IRI was a later discovery. Furthermore, this technology is 20 plus years old, and those in control could have easily utilized this concept to build a more technologically advanced version to exceed the capabilities of the former. Whatever the government was using the IRI for in the past may no longer be a part of their agenda. The technology simply opened the door. Whether HAARP was a deliberate effort to construct the IRI for weather-altering purposes or not, we know that we cannot avoid the progression of technology. As stated in Daniel Chandler's inevitability thesis, once a technology is introduced into society, what follows is the inevitable development of that technology. Theoretical physicist Dr. Michio Kaku appeared on CBS this morning and spoke on the latest technology regarding weather manipulation. News anchor Nora O'Donnell opened up with these terrifying words. We are learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Lasers now could one day manipulate rain and lightning. Kaku elaborated on this further, explaining how they are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to generate precipitation and lightning bolts. In view of our discussion on radical mythology, I cannot help but to think of Thor, god of thunder, in their efforts to control the weather. At any rate, Kaku freely admits that governments have been experimenting with this technology for decades. He dated the experiments back to the 1960s. At some point, we must ask why these experiments are considered normal. It is because we have been conditioned to accept what the media advertises as standard scientific protocol, acquiring data for the benefit of society. And it does not end with HAARP. Weather modification and geoengineering seems minor when compared to other technologies that have been weaponized. Another organization known as C.E.R.N. has a mission to understand how the universe works. On the surface, this establishment has the same face as any other scientific network, endeavoring to benefit mankind. If you visit the C.E.R.N. website, you will find the following mission statements. Our mission is to provide a unique range of particle accelerator facilities that enable research at the forefront of human knowledge, to perform world-class research in fundamental physics, and to unite people from all over the world to push the frontiers of science and technology for the benefit of all. C.E.R.N., whose logo is comprised of 3 overlapping sixes, specializes in particle and high-energy physics, studying antimatter in efforts to observe the fundamental particles that are said to make up the observable universe. Basically, they seek to discover the smallest building blocks of matter to understand what our universe consists of. The most notable investment of their research is the Large Hadron Collider, or the LHC, which is the world's largest and most powerful particle accelerator, well, at least for now. A particle accelerator is a machine designed to speed up particles until they collide with one another, producing the conditions that enable research teams to observe and study matter. The purpose of the LHC is to, quote, reproduce the conditions that existed within a billionth of a second after the Big Bang by colliding beams of high-energy protons or ions at colossal speeds. From a theistic or creationist position, I find this humorous. It cannot be said that they are trying to reproduce the conditions that caused the Big Bang, but the conditions that existed a billionth of a second after. Why is that? Well, according to popular science, nothing existed prior to this billionth of a second. Therefore, we would have nothing to reproduce in the first place. But instead of addressing this predicament, they are forced to ignore these obvious signs and start 1/billionth of a second later, after matter curiously self-generated from nothing. A particle accelerator operates by stimulating beams of particles. Electric fields control the speed of particles, while magnets are used to steer the beams. In a vacuum-controlled environment, this process allows protons and electrons to accelerate and travel either in a linear or circular trajectory, depending on the layout of the accelerator track, where electric fields can change polarities at certain frequencies, thus generating radio waves, which accelerates clusters of particles. Located near Geneva, Switzerland, the ring-shaped tunnel of the LHC measures 16.5 miles in circumference and is buried approximately 300 feet beneath the surface of the ground. To those more seasoned in physics, the function of the LHC might make sense. But to the rest of us, it might sound like something Mr. Spock would explain on an episode of Star Trek or some other sci-fi favorite. In fact, prior to my knowledge of C.E.R.N, I had only heard of a particle accelerator on a television series. In The Flash, a laboratory called Star Labs featured a newly constructed particle accelerator as its main attraction. In this series, the very first time the accelerator powered up, it coupled with a lightning storm which caused an explosion, thus triggering a massive wave of energy that affected many of the citizens of Central City. Barry Allen, a forensics scientist who works for the CCPD, was both struck by lightning and jolted by a wave of energy from the particle explosion, which gave him lightning speed that he would learn to harness for fighting metahumans henceforth. Throughout the series, the particle accelerator was often used to open portals to new dimensions or parallel universes, as well as traveling to different times in the past and future. Fritz Springmeier believes C.E.R.N overlaps with several other subjects: standard physics, quantum computing, superstring theory, astronomy, parallel universes and multiverses, extra dimensions, NASA, the Illuminati, portals or stargates or wormholes, biblical prophecy, and the Mandela effect. The Alberino analysis also sheds some light on the esoteric objective of C.E.R.N, as well as its connection with the occult. Outside of the entrance to C.E.R.N's headquarters stands a statue of Shiva, the primordial Hindu god of destruction. Shiva is the supreme being who created, protects, and transforms the universe. According to Hindu mythology, Lord Shiva destroys the world to renew, restore, and reconstitute it. The hope for the physicists at C.E.R.N is to discover new particles in other dimensions. They are confident that they have the capability of opening portals that will allow something or someone from another realm to enter ours. This is a reality to C.E.R.N physicists, and we cannot afford to take it lightly. We're talking about having the ability to summon not just matter, but entities from other realms. We are dealing with an agency that intends to rebuild the Tower of Babel of modern times by opening portals and accessing spirits of the underworld. Beneath the surface, the intention is to contact and communicate with the dark rulers of the supernatural world. Perhaps the most startling thought can be summed up by a statement in the following analysis. Speaking of the supreme hidden purpose of C.E.R.N's agenda, this is what Timothy Alberino explains.
I believe that the Luciferian priesthood behind the thrones of the European Union and the United Nations intend to use C.E.R.N as the key to literally open the gates of hell in order to release the gods that have been imprisoned there, those fallen watchers and arcane entities bound with chains in the abyss of Tartarus. Their prime objective is the restoration of the Golden Age, when the gods mingled themselves with the seed of men, and their hybrid offspring ruled the earth. All of our research points inexorably to this grand conspiracy. It is my contention that the earth is even now being slowly terraformed via chemtrailing, HAARP, and other such clandestine programs in order to reconstitute the conditions that existed on the planet before the flood of Noah, in anticipation of the hybrid race that is coming. By breaking the subatomic bonds of matter and casting away the cords that hold the material world together, mankind will willingly tear the veil that has been established for his own protection and unleash a darkness and chaos that the earth has not seen for many ages. This is the master plan of the Luciferian elite.
Mankind has no need to collide particles or open portals to understand what the universe consists of. We have the answer right in front of us. John testified that Jesus was the beginning of the creation of God. God created all things by Jesus, meaning Jesus was the initial design. He was the mechanism, or the blueprint, so to speak. Essentially, God purposed creation with his Son as the preliminary design. Moreover, Jesus is the very particle of which modern science is willfully ignorant. Colossians 1 verses 15 through 17 states, "Who is the image of the invisible God?" Talking about Christ. "He is the firstborn of every creature. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones, dominions, principalities, or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist." It has now been mentioned twice, once in the opening of this chapter and again in Alberino's commentary. Chemtrails are another example of weaponization. Chemtrailing is the intentional effort to disperse geoengineered chemicals containing heavy metals into the atmosphere by routing airplanes carrying chemical tanks across the earth, spraying poisons into the atmosphere for the purpose of controlling both the weather and the world's population. Not to be confused with contrails, which are merely vapors that quickly dissipate within seconds. Chemtrails are loaded with toxic chemicals, quote, including but not limited to barium, strontium-90, aluminum, cadmium, zinc, viruses and chaff, which is nothing more than mylar fibers coated with aluminum, desiccated blood cells, plastic, and paper. If you type the phrase, "Weatherman admits military spraying chemicals," into your search engine, you will find multiple results of a video that has raised some eyebrows. During a weather report, a local meteorologist stated the following: "Then you see these bands of very distinct cloud cover moving over the region. That is not rain, that is not snow. Believe it or not, military aircrafts flying through the region are dropping chaff, small bits of aluminum. Sometimes it's made of plastic or even metallicized paper products, but it's used as an anti-radar issue, and obviously they're practicing." Now, they won't confirm that, but I was in the Marine Corps for many years, and I'll tell you right now, that's what it is. It is no longer a question whether this conspiracy is real or not. There is evidence, including pictures, witnesses, and official data, all of which have been exposed. Recently, chemtrailing and geoengineering has been given a new name: stratospheric aerosol injection. Although it is a veil term to spray heavy metals in the atmosphere, it is nonetheless a Luciferian smokescreen. No pun intended. Moreover, chemtrails are undeniably real and contribute to the worldwide conspiracy of population control. If you do not believe there is an effort to control the world's population, then visit the Georgia Guidestones, otherwise known as the American Stonehenge. In 1980, this 19-foot structure, consisting of 4 vertical stone slabs and a capstone, was erected just east of Atlanta, Georgia, and is astronomically aligned with the stars. Etched on the slabs, you will find a cryptic message of world governance, appearing as if it were the 10 Commandments of the elites. The first message reads, "Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature." Because of the mystic nature of the monument, which is self-evident from its disruptive placement, megalithic appearance, cryptic message, and high-dollar price tag, the Guidestones have raised questions from onlookers. Even Wikipedia admits this, stating, quote, "The anonymity of the Guidestones' authors and their apparent advocacy of population control, eugenics, and internationalism have made them a target for controversy and conspiracy theory." To this day, the official story is that an individual under the pseudonym of Robert C. Christian requested a quote from the Elberton Granite Finishing Company on behalf of a small group of loyal Americans whose purpose was to construct a monument that would function as a compass, calendar, and a clock. Yet it is evident from the cryptic attributes of the structure that it serves a purpose much darker than direction, orientation, and time. The message to those visiting the site is etched on a separate stone that reads, "Let these be guidestones to an age of reason." Considering the suspicious appeal of the arrangement, it must be asked, by what motive of reason does this anonymous group of self-proclaimed nationalists have to keep the world population under 500 million? At the time I wrote this, the world population, according to Worldometers, was 7,668,538,275. Need we be reminded of the soon coming war that will depopulate the world of 1/3 of mankind? Let this reality sink in. Indisputably, we are facing an effort to maintain world order, and depopulation is a part of that agenda. There are clear and visible signs. The Georgia Guidestones are just one example of many. If you were to spend time researching the geographical layouts and monuments across the earth, then you would also question why so much money and effort has been invested into this iconography that has absolutely no significance unless you understand the devil's plan. It would also behoove my readers and listeners to consider the 10 stages of genocide, as it is a strategy for population control. It is critical that we snap out of this willfully ignorant mindset and wake up to the enemy's tactics. The fingerprints of the elite are everywhere. They have their hands in more places than we could possibly imagine. They are cunning. They disguise themselves as angels of light. They are experts in the game of deception. The Apostle Paul tells us that the coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie, in all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refused to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie.